Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Daniele Dosi, and I have the pleasure today to host this info session on the call SMP Cosme 2023 SMEUA support to Ukrainian companies to integrate into the single market. As you have seen through the registration page, this event will last roughly for a couple of hours. That very much depends also on the number of questions that we will be getting after the presentations that you will be listening to this morning. That being said, just a very quick note on the number of attendees that have registered for this event, which I recall you will be recorded and then available on the ACEMEA website. We have roughly 45 registered participants coming from needless to say, all over Europe, single market program associated countries, and of course from Ukraine. Now, how the morning will be rolled over? Well, first of all, some housekeeping rules. Your microphone and camera are switched off by default. As I said, the meeting is recorded, but if you don't wish your name to appear in the recording, please make sure to submit your question in Sliders as anonymous. And as I said, slides and recording of this meeting will be available on the call page after the event, and we will make sure to inform you by email. With me this morning, I have the pleasure to have speakers from DG Grow, who is our leading parent DG, who has delegated the implementation of this call to the agency. Mrs. Martin Dies, senior expert at DG Grow. Martin will provide a helicopter view as far as the policy context of this call is concerned. Then there's going to be myself speaking on the technicalities and more specifically on the operational part of this business bridge call. And last but not least, we're going to have our colleague, Jana Tobiasova from ACEMEA, who will enter more into the nitty-gritty of the financial aspect of this grant. I should also say that this morning, there's going to be also a presentation from the Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs team. They will be essentially providing us few elements on the Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs Ukrainian call. There has been already been an event, an info day last week on that, but since this is very much a sister call for proposal of the business bridge, we thought that having another quick info session on the call would have been very much appreciated by all of you. At the end of the day, after all our presentations, you'll be able to get an answer on the questions that you might have had the chance to submit via the Slido app. And here you can see indeed the slide. We hopefully will be able to provide you with a substantiated answer to all of your questions. But if for any reason related to time or because we will have to have a look at more carefully internally, don't you worry, the answer will be provided on the call portal underneath the FAQ session. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Martin Dies, as I said, senior expert at DigiGrow, who will be providing us the policy context of the business bridge to facilitate the access of Ukrainian SMEs to the EU single market. Martin, welcome, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniele, and welcome to all participants. I'm happy to be able to take part in this info day today. The timing is just perfect because you still have a bit less than a month to complete your application, and I hope we will have quite a few of them because this is a very important call for DigiGrow. It's a kind of a pilot. We have never launched a call of this kind, but for us it's very important to establish such a business bridge between Ukrainian SMEs who have been very much affected by the war, but at the same time also shown a very high level of resilience. So it's important to give them further opportunities to get to be ready to enter the single market. I know that there is quite a high level of uncertainties because of the current existing, I would say, political context and especially the war situation, which is still leaving a lot of uncertainties. But on the other hand, we know that it's important both for Ukrainian SMEs and EU companies to keep on doing business. Supply chains have been disrupted, and it's important to find new markets on both sides, especially on the Ukrainian side. The internal market is shrinking, so the export is exporting, internationalizing is really important for these companies. We also know that there are other initiatives that are taking place that are even organized by other DGs, especially DG NEAR, who is also, I mean, whose main role is to support Ukraine. But on the other hand, the needs are so huge that we thought it is important to offer as many opportunities as possible to Ukrainian companies and to EU companies to facilitate this integration. So what have we been doing since February of last year? The EU has been deploying, of course, many efforts against this illegal and unjustified aggression of Ukraine. So first of all, the support was mainly in kind of humanitarian aid, but also microfinancial assistance to help Ukraine pay the wages and pensions and maintain the essential public services, such as hospitals, school, housing, and so on. So far, the support of from the EU has amounted to 67 billion euros. We have also been providing some support in terms of military support, which was the first time ever that this has happened on the EU front. And of course, we have been deploying a whole series of sanctions against Russia and Belarus that are showing now to be affecting these two economies. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, the impact on the impact of the aggression on Ukraine has been also felt very strongly on the European companies, and we have been working under the supply chain task force. We have been looking at the different the impact on the different industrial sectors and ecosystems. And we could see, and here is just an example, the strong impact it has had on sectors like agro-food, chemicals, agricultural machinery, and you can find the information about this supply chain task force on DigiGrow website. You will also understand that we have also been working on other topics that have been important, especially affecting both Ukrainian side and our EU companies that were affected by the high energy cost and also the high level of inflation. Next slide, please. You might wonder why we believe that it's important to do business and invest in Ukraine now. And this is a question that we often hear from different parts of, I would say, from the general public. But on the other hand, I think for businessmen from the EU and Ukraine, it is quite obvious that there is no reason not to do business with Ukraine now, because Ukrainian companies have been suffering a lot. I mentioned from the supply chain, but they have also been suffering a lot from the fact that their local markets has been shrinking. And in June last year, the EU also gave a very clear signal by granting the accession statute to Ukraine. This was a very important political move, and this has been, I would say, the foundation for us to reinforce our effort and to really show unwavering support to Ukraine. So coming back to the title of this slide, why now? Now we believe it's the right moment because the reconstruction process of Ukraine is taking place already now, and we have to help to start the country's economy again and to help the people of Ukraine. On the other hand, the Ukrainian government is also deploying enormous efforts in order to improve the business environment. They are working on deregulation. They are establishing many different policy reforms. They are fighting corruption. They also want to facilitate investments from third countries. So there are many opportunities, and not just for big companies, but also small and medium-sized companies. And this call is meant to address small and medium-sized companies. We have been, I guess, for those of you who have been working with Ukraine or who are based in Ukraine, you are probably familiar with tools that have been set up, which is the DIA business tool. This is just one example of how much attention is given to businesses in Ukraine in order to help them to digitalize, to offer them a series of different information and advisory tools, but also help them to internationalize, get a good understanding of what's happening on the international market, and really give them the tools in order to, if they want to set up a company, to run it successfully, to grow. And in our case, of course, because this call is taking place under the single market call, it's also important to take into account the fact that we also want companies in Ukraine and the EU, we want to help them in their transition for digital and green transition. Here you can have a snapshot about all the different work that is currently taking place in Ukraine in order to facilitate this business environment. Last week or about 10 days ago, we also heard when the World Bank presented its report, the second assessment report on the cost of the destructions and the estimated cost for reconstruction and recovery at about $411 billion. So you can imagine that the Ukrainian market will be extremely important in the coming years. There will be a lot of opportunities for different companies from around the world to invest in Ukraine. But we believe that the reconstruction efforts should already be starting now and is already starting now. When we look at the priorities that the Ukrainian government has set for the year 2023, we can see that the support to the private sector is one of the 5 important priorities. And this, I think, is very important to take into account. We know that all the needs for the reconstruction of Ukraine will be important in the future and will definitely cover all sector of industry. So there is really room for, I would say, companies in many different ecosystems. Next slide, please. What have we been doing so far for SMEs and industry? So as I mentioned before, we have been working on the integration of Ukraine into the single market. This is efforts that we are currently undertaking. When we look at the legislative framework, it is part of the deep and comprehensive free trade agreement that my colleagues from DigiTrade are managing. And within this deep and comprehensive free trade agreement, they have agreed on a priority action plan to enhance the implementation of this agreement. The actions among them include work on public procurement, on standards, industrial cooperation, technical barriers to trade, and also an agreement on conformity assessments and acceptance of industrial products. This agreement is called ACA. We have also been taking away all import duties for Ukrainian products. This is quite important, and it will be renewed this year. So for the moment, Ukrainian products enter the EU market without any additional tax. Besides, we have been working on a partnership agreement between the EU and raw materials. And I would say, most importantly, we have been encouraging strong business cooperation. We have done that in 3 different manners. First of all, our Enterprise Europe network have been strongly organizing or strongly active in organizing many events, offering a whole series of services online, but they have also taken some Ukrainian companies to some events and fairs in Europe. Our cluster organizations have also been extremely active, and not later than last week, I took part in a very successful event, which was the first ever EU-Ukraine cluster meeting, but also EU-Ukraine business cooperation event, which was also offering many opportunities for companies to pitch their services and to do some matchmaking between them. I cannot tell you yet the results of all this conference, but it was extremely promising, and it really shows that on both sides there is strong interest, and this is really encouraging for our call that we are working on today. So our networks have been very busy. We have also adapted the rules for Erasmus for young entrepreneurs. You will hear about a presentation later on this morning about Erasmus for young entrepreneurs. For those of you who are not familiar with this program, And you will also hear that another call has also been launched and is might be of interest to you if you want to take part in order to increase the level of participation of Ukraine. Sorry, can we just go back to the last slide? Yes, I also wanted to mention that since the beginning of the war, so since last February, our EN, but also cluster members have been active in taking part in 3 new business matchmaking platforms. The first one is the platform on supply chain. The second one was linked to the action or the initiative on solidarity lanes. And that action was launched by the European Commission to help Ukraine export grains and all kinds of food products and even other industrial products. And the last platform that has been set up was last December, and that was more on the energy side, because as you are aware, the Ukraine has been very much hit by energy shortages. So it was important also to help restore some of this supply chain that had been destroyed. So next slide, please. And this will be my last slide. So what, as I said, many actions have been taking place, but we wanted to focus on 2 specific actions under the Single Market Program. So the Single Market Program is the program of DG Grow to help small and medium-sized companies in the participating countries, so in the EU and countries like Ukraine. The objective of the SMP is to help companies to grow, to internationalize, to be more competitive, but also to help them to be more green and digital. So that's why the objective of these calls are fully aligned with the objective of the Single Market Program. And as soon as early February, we were very pleased that at the level of President von der Leyen and Prime Minister Schmihal, there was the official signature for the accession of Ukraine to the Single Market Program that took place on the 2nd of February. A few days later, the Commission adopted the work program for the Single Market 2023, and that has allowed us to publish then these 2 calls. So I think I will stop here, and I will let my colleague Daniele to give you more details about it. I hope you will that many of you will submit some proposals. For us, as I said, it's really like a pilot, and we strongly believe that it will bring a lot of benefits to companies in these very troubled times. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours, Daniele.
Thank you very much, Martine. I think that you provided an excellent overview of all of the support that the European Commission has provided to Ukraine. But as you were saying, and as it has been reiterated many times, I mean, the EU will support Ukraine as long as it is needed. So this is indeed only the beginning, and I think it's very important also to encapsulate our call within the general framework of all the support measures, regulatory measures, assistance to improve the framework conditions, as we name them, to help indeed SMEs to prosper. Now, as you were correctly pointing out, I'm going to provide our participants. Uh, uh, Few elements, or I should say even more than few elements on the call. As I said before, my presentation will be essentially covering the operational aspects of the call, whereas my colleague Yana Dobiazova will be tackling the financial aspects of it. And as we know very much, the devil lies in the details. So I think that part, as well as this one, will be very much welcomed. So I will start my presentation. So next slide, please. Um, what are the objectives of this call? Now, the objective of the action is, first of all, to select a consortium of various business support organizations, and we will cover later on what kind of support organizations we are looking for. And this consortium, made of various support business organizations, will have the task to select up to 1,500 growth and sustainability oriented Ukrainian SMEs that will benefit from direct financial support of up to 2,500 euros in order, as we have many times stated, in order to facilitate their access to the EU single market. It is very important here to stress one thing. The SMEs that are being facilitated into the single market can be based in regions where Ukrainian authorities exercise effective territorial control and displaced and originally Ukrainian registered companies currently operating from the EU and maintaining business links and cooperation with Ukraine. So this is a not negligible aspect that we want to shed light on. And I think it is very very important. Next slide, please. Now, as you know, and as you heard from the previous presentation of the policy context, also this grant, this call for proposal, is compatible with a number of, I should say, overarching objectives that are those of the single market program, which is the program where actually the money for this call for proposal come from. And in elaborating the text of this call, we indeed thought that the objectives of this action needed to be exactly compatible with that of the single market. So in this respect, providing various forms of support to SMEs, contributing to foster growth, scale up and creation of SMEs, facilitate access to markets through the internationalization of SMEs, promote entrepreneurship and the acquisition of entrepreneurial skills. Next slide, please. Support the competitiveness, promote the modernization of industry, and promote a favorable business environment for SMEs are all objectives that we aim at reaching through this action. So I reiterate, improvement of framework conditions, internationalization, upscale of skills, support to competitiveness. These are the big lines along which we aim at indeed helping Ukrainian companies. Next slide, please. Now, In terms of the eligible SMEs that will be able to participate um, in the actions that I will be speaking about in a moment from now. We are not going to be focusing on any specific industrial ecosystem. Now, the European Commission has identified a number of ecosystems ranging from aerospace and defense to health, from agri-food to construction, retail. So the bottom line is that all companies adhering to the various ecosystems identified by the renewed industrial policy put forward by DG Grow will be eligible to participate into the financing up to 2,500 euros. However, we do have some priority groups. Women entrepreneurships and social economy enterprises will be particularly looked after. In terms of eligibility, well, I said SMEs need to be based in regions where Ukrainian authorities exercise effective territorial control. They need to be able to demonstrate that they suffered from the war, that they have potential to generate market access and supply and investment opportunities for EU business. They also need to agree to be referred to in a future central database of Ukrainian SMEs receiving financial support from the EU and internationally funded schemes, and the capacity to prove that are not receiving funding from any other entity for the activities supported by this action. And this is very important because, as you know, we cannot allow double funding. And also, like I said before, I mean, the SMEs doesn't need to be necessarily physically in Ukraine, but can also operate from the EU. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of the main activities, you see here that there is a rather long list. I'm not going to go through each and every point, but if I were to summarize the big macro areas that the main activities will essentially refer to, I would nevertheless link these macro areas to the overarching objectives of the single market program I was hinting before. So you see that there's a certain number of activities which range from legal advice to entering international markets, from technological audits and provision of technical support to market research to identify EU partners as suppliers or clients. So in a nutshell, I would definitely say that we could encapsulate these activities in what we call horizontal support to internationalization of SMEs, and of course to audit and adaptation of products to EU standards and norms, because as you know, when products need to enter the single market, that is one of the issues that mostly blocks their free flow into the EU. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of how we are going to deploy these activities. Now, in order to implement the action, the Common Secretariat is expected to carry at least the following dedicated activities. And Uh, well, naturally, I mean, the first step would be the selection by dedicated, open, and competitive calls of Ukrainian SMEs that will receive direct financial support as outlined in activities that can be founded above. Then we will have the selection of fairs organized in the EU, which SMEs selected under the call could take part to. And it's very important that the consortium will also negotiate fair organizers to offer reduced participation fees or free space to these enterprises. I want to stress this point very clearly. This is something the consortium will have to be engaged strongly to, because indeed one of the questions and contentious points that was raised when presenting the call, or one of the questions we also got in our functional mailbox: how will be possible that 2,500 euros will help SMEs to participate into fairs? Now, we know very well indeed that sometimes fees in these fairs can be, as a matter of fact, quite expensive, but this is indeed one of the lines along which the consortium of business support organizations will have to exercise, let's say, a number of soft skills so that SMEs can indeed take advantage of the action as much as possible. Next slide, please. Other activities that the consortium will be engaged into: provision to selected SMEs of accompanying additional services linked to indeed presence at fairs, such as linking them to partnering activities. Then the consortium will have to provide for the possibilities of selecting Ukrainian SMEs to exchange with fellow entrepreneurs and pool services, such as, for instance, logistics, and provide to selected SMEs networking opportunities with former I participants, Enterprise Europe Network members, and clusters organization in the EU that are used to organizing or participating into matchmaking events. Now, all of us around this table, and I should say all of the attendees, very well know already that in this respect, this call for proposal is a restricted one. I'm gonna address this issue later on. Yet, I mean, you know that already that at least one of the business support organizations being part of a consortium needs to be a current or former EEN member, or Erasmus for Young Entrepreneur intermediary organization, or European Cluster Collaboration Platform members. Now, why is this? I'm going to anticipate a little bit what I'm going to say afterwards, because we wanted to make sure that the three flagship initiatives, notably Enterprise Europe Network, Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs, and European Cluster Collaboration Platform, broke the silos and worked together. These three flagship initiatives funded underneath the single market programs are there since quite some time, but we thought that this was very much a privileged opportunity for them to work together and help indeed where it was mostly needed. Next slide, please. There is still a few activities and how the consortium will have to interact. And here I speak very much about once the consortium is set with reference to the exchanges with the European Commission and the agency. So the Common Secretariat will have indeed regular exchanges, excuse me, notably in the form of monthly meeting with the agency and the European Commission to discuss progress of implementation of the action. Language will be, of course, that in English, which is the working language, the most commonly used working language at European Commission level. The coordination and follow-up services to selected SMEs upon return from a trade mission, such as holding a debrief or lessons learned session and support in drafting an action plan. So in a nutshell, we want to make sure that there is a careful selection of the SMEs participating, for instance, in a trade fair, but that is not enough in our view. So we want also to make sure that this client orientation from the support from a business support organization is also mirrored in a way also in the follow-up. So there's a ex ante and an ex post of the action dedicated to the SMEs, and also the provision to selected SMEs of additional services that might be considered as appropriate and complementary services, like, for instance, a training to increase digital skills or sustainability, specific legal and advisory service to engage in cooperation agreement with another EU company that will promote their products and services. Now, to many of you here today, these trainings and these words don't come out of the blue. I mean, especially when we speak about sustainability, when we speak about digitalization, when we speak about resilience, these, are indeed the cornerstones underneath each and every political actions has been launched by DG Grow in the years before and very much in the months ahead of us. Next slide, please. What is the expected impact of the action? Now, as I said, and this is clearly understandable, we expect to deliver at least to 1,500 Ukrainian SMEs, a wide range of services that would result in benefiting from direct financial support to identify European market needs, enter the single market, participate in EU trade fairs, and develop their business and or online services. We also expect that greater opportunities for companies run by women entrepreneurs and social economy entrepreneurs will come from these actions. And of course, higher participation and diversity on the three matchmaking tools: supply chain resilience, solidarity lanes, and electric energy platforms. Next slide, please. Contribution to a green, digital, and resilient economy in the EU and Ukraine. As I was saying before, this is very much to be stressed, also because within the long-term goals of the EU, we need to be carbon neutral, to become carbon neutral as quickly as possible to fight climate change. We also expect improved cooperation with European businesses interested to work with European companies. We expect further economic growth and trade flows between EU and Ukraine, and increased cooperation between EU and Ukrainian companies. In terms of economic growth, we've heard before what Martin was mentioning, in particular with the massive opportunities that there will be in terms or related to the reconstruction. So I should say post-war, but even as Martin was pointing out, I mean, the reconstruction really starts now. So massive opportunities both for Ukraine to enter the biggest single market, biggest and well-functioning single market um, in its 30th anniversary, because it's been 30 years that the European single market is there, but also opportunities for European companies to participate inter alia to the reconstruction of Ukraine due to the Russian aggression. Next slide, please. Now, how the no, was too fast. Yes. So now, how the consortium will be assessed. Now, the criteria through which the agency, jointly with the European Commission, will use to assess the consortium will essentially relate to the number of Ukrainian SMEs benefiting from direct EU financial support, the number of new companies registered on the supply chain resilience or solidarity lane platforms by the support office, the number of companies taking part in physical business fair, the number of companies taking part in online matchmaking events. Next slide, please. And this is even more important, the number of joint venture as a result of participating in physical or online matchmaking events, the number of new companies joining the Ukrainian Cluster Alliance via the support office, and calls issued by the consortium must include an obligation for selected SMEs to clearly display the EU funding received and advertised or communicate. So the action should therefore have a positive impact on the visibility of EU funding to a vulnerable group of economic operators. So you can clearly see that these, I would call, key performance indicators relate essentially to the number of selected SMEs and to the spillover effect that the choice of these SMEs will generate in terms of, like I said, joint venture partnership agreements between companies. And also one aspect that we never stress enough, to indeed the communication and the advertisement of the action as such. Next slide, please. Now here we have the timetable and the deadline. As you know, the call has been launched on the 28th of February 2023. Now, let me stress why this is the case. The 28th is a date that most of us recall, because exactly on the 28th of February 2022, there is the commemoration of the first victim for the war in Ukraine. So we wanted also to launch this action symbolically to commemorate them. The deadline for the submission will be on the 27th of April this month at 5 p.m. Central European Time. Now, 27th of April, and you see that after, so meaning in 24 days from now, you see that we have a rather, I should say, ambitious time frame. We expect to run the evaluation of the received proposals in May, providing information on the evaluation results in June, and starts the grant agreement preparation with the selected consortium in the months of July and August. Now, this is very much a tentative time frame that we provide you with, but we would very much like to stick to that, especially because we know that there is a need to help Ukrainian companies in 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 prosper. So we aim at being rather fast in all our different steps. Obviously, depending on how many applications, how many proposals, excuse me, we will be getting. Next slide, please. Now we talk about a little bit the admissibility and the documents that need to be provided. Needless to say, proposals must be submitted before the call deadline. Now, a little bit of a piece of a suggestion, a piece of advice I could give you. Don't wait until the very last minute to submit such a proposal, because there could be a glitch in the system, in your internet connection. So this is very much a suggestion that I can give you. Don't wait until the very last minute, because once the call deadline has passed, we are not in the position to reopen it. Proposal must be submitted electronically via the funding and tenders portal electronic submission system, and paper submissions are not possible. Proposals, including annexes and supporting documents, must be submitted using the forms provided inside the submission systems. Now, these are rules that most of you, I'm quite sure, are rather familiar with, but I thought it was worth mentioning and re-mentioning them because we are never, I mean, it's better, as I usually say, it's better to be safe than sorry. Next slide, please. Because in terms of admissibility and documents, we must also stress out that proposals must be complete and contain all the requested information and all required annexes and supporting documents. In particular, with you usually know that there's the application is composed of two parts. So part A, which contains the administrative information about the participants, so the future coordinator, the beneficiaries and affiliated entities, and the summarized budget for the project to be filled in directly online. But around budget, my colleague Jana Dobiazova will providing you more information about it. And the part B, which is part of the application, which contains the technical description of the project to be downloaded from the portal submission system and completing and then assembled and then re-uploaded. Next slide, please. You see here a series of mandatory annexes and supported documents to be uploaded. Have this list very well in mind, because it's part of your application package. And in this respect, detailed budget, table, and calculator, and the template is available in the submission system. CVs, obviously short outlines of a core project team, and proof of membership of the consortium participants in EEN, Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs, or European Cluster Collaboration Platform. Now, former members of the Enterprise Europe Network or Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs intermediary organizations must provide the reference of the supporting of the corresponding EU project. European Cluster Collaboration Platform members must instead provide proof of their call. You need also to provide reports of last year, but that is not applicable, and list of previous projects. So key projects for the last 4 years, and that is, the template is available in part B. So next slide, please. So at proposal submission, you will have to confirm that you have the mandate to act for all applicants. This is very important. And moreover, this is obviously related to the coordinator who will submit the proposal. Moreover, you will have to confirm that the information in the application is correct and complete, and that the participants comply with the condition for receiving EU funding, especially in terms of eligibility, financial and operational capacity, exclusion, etc. And I would like to stress on the financial and operational capacity, because that is sometimes one of the most contentious issues that we face at sometimes even at grant agreement preparation phase. Before signing the grant, that is, of course, once the evaluation has been run, each beneficiary and affiliated entity will have to confirm this again by signing a declaration of honors. A proposal without full support will be rejected. So this is also a very important aspect. Next slide, please. Your application must be readable, accessible, and printable, and they're limited to it's limited in part B to a maximum of 50 pages. This is rather important because evaluators, assessors will not consider any additional page. Of course, you may be asked at later stage further documents for legal entity validation, financial capacity check, bank account validation, etc. So let's say that the submission of your proposal doesn't end on the 27th of April, but might indeed continue if assessors and evaluators have to indeed consider other elements of your application. Next slide, please. In terms of being eligible. Now, in order to be eligible, the applicants, so beneficiaries and affiliated entities, must be legal entities, so public or private body, be established in one of the eligible countries, so meaning EU member states, including overseas countries and territories, non-EU countries associated to single market programs, or countries which are in ongoing negotiation for an association agreement and where the agreement enters into force before grant signature. And I invite you to have a look on the call text to see the list of these participating countries. And needless to say, in Ukraine, established in territories that are under the effective control of the Ukrainian authorities at the submission deadline. Next slide, please. As I was saying before, you have to be formally recognized as a current under the Single Market Program or former under the COSME program Enterprise Europe Network member, or be part of the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, which is profiled as a national cluster association or meta-cluster and cluster network, or Ukrainian Cluster Alliance member, or current or former Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs intermediary organization. Now, this is very important, and I have stressed before why this is the case. One signal that we wanted indeed to launch was very much related to that of breaking the silos, between the various flagship initiatives that are currently financed under the Single Market Program or under the COSME program prior to the newly established one as of January 2022. Next slide, please. So the consortium composition. So proposals must be submitted by a consortium of at least 3 applicants, meaning beneficiaries and not affiliated entities, which complies with the following conditions. Minimum of 3 independent entities from 3 different eligible countries. Minimum 1 applicant must be based in Ukraine, located in territories that are under the effective control of the Ukrainian authorities, and the consortium coordinator must be established in a member state of the European Union or the EEA. Next slide, please. The consortium must include at least 1 member under the current Single Market Program or the former COSME program of each of the following network: 1 Enterprise Europe Network member, 1 Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs intermediary organization, and 1 member registered on the European Cluster Collaboration Platform at the time of the submission deadline and throughout the implementation phase of a project. Next slide, please. Before going into the eligibility and evaluation and award procedure, if we could go back to the precedent slide, please, to the previous slide. I would also like to mention that the consortium, irrespective of its composition, will have to be and will be indeed strongly encouraged by both the ACMEA and the European Commission to work closely with business support organizations which are based in Ukraine. So irrespective of the fact that these Ukrainian business support organizations are not part of a consortium, nevertheless, one aspect that we will very much put our attention on will be indeed collaboration with other business support organizations based in Ukraine. I want to make this very clear because it's an essential point for us. Next slide, please. In terms of eligibility and meaning evaluation and award procedures, the proposal will have to follow the standard submission and evaluation procedure. So there's going to be 1 stage submission and 1 step evaluation. An evaluation committee, which is going to be assisted by independent outside experts, will assess all applications, and all proposals will be informed about the evaluation results through an evaluation letter. And successful proposals will be invited for grant preparation. The other ones will be put on a reserve list or rejected. Next slide, please. Now, the result as such of the evaluation is by no way a commitment for funding. So invitation to grant preparation does not constitute a formal commitment for funding. and we will still need to make various legal checks before the grant award. Legal entity validation, financial capacity, exclusion check. So this is very important to stress. And the grant preparation will also involve, as we call it, a dialogue. This dialogue, which is usually during the grant agreement preparation, is a rather important phase where we fine-tune technical or financial aspects of a project, and may indeed require some extra information from your side. It may also include adjustments on the proposals to address recommendation on the evaluation committee or other concerns. Next slide, please. And if you believe, of course, that the evaluation procedure was flawed, you can submit a complaint within 10 days. Next slide, please. The award criteria, I would be very quick on this. Relevance, quality in the project design and implementation, quality in the project team and cooperation arrangement, and impact. The minimum score would be 70 out of 100, but to pass, you need a minimum pass score in each of the award criteria, and the maximum, of course, being 30, 30, 30, and 10. Next slide, please. And I think this is all from me. I let now the floor to my colleague, Jana Dobiazova, Financial Officer within MEA. Jana, thanks for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Good morning. So as introduced by Daniela, I will now present the financial provisions that are applicable to this call, and hopefully will help you with the finalization of your applications. Next slide, please. So there are two financial documents to be prepared. It is the summarized budget table and the detailed budget table. You will firstly need to fill in and prepare the detailed budget table, which needs to follow a template that is available in Part B of the application, and which is a mandatory annex, as was mentioned by Daniela before. And this has to be uploaded as a part of your proposal. And then you will finalize the summarized budget table from Part A online. Please note that the amounts entered into the summarized budget table must correspond to the amounts that are calculated in the detailed budget table. And in case of discrepancies, it will be the online summarized budget table that will prevail. Next slide, please. I will now explain to you a little bit how the detailed budget table is structured and provide you with some practical information how to fill in the necessary information. So I assume since you probably started working on these applications and these budget tables, so you would see when you open the template that there are a few introductory sheets, and these are not to be submitted. It will be only sheets 3, 4, and 5 that are to be submitted as one merged document with your application. On sheet 2, you only need to fill in the project data and the work packages, which will then basically transfer this info to sheets 3 and 4, which are generated automatically for you to fill in. And sheet 5 is then to be filled in manually by the coordinator, but we will get to that. Next slide, please. So the most important sheet is sheet number 3, which is the detailed budget table that you will have to present for each participant, and in case of affiliated entities, also for each affiliated entity. You need to keep in mind that the budget needs to be based on detailed, reasonable, and accurate estimates, as good estimates as you can provide. You can see on the print screen also that the budget table is broken down by cost category and work package. Please keep in mind that for technical reasons, the number of work packages has to be the same in all cost categories. So in case you don't have estimated costs for a certain work package, it's fine, you just leave it empty and the template will work correctly. Next slide, please. So sheet 4 is then consolidated table per participant, and sheet 5 consolidated table per project. For the consolidated table per participant, this shows different cost headings per work package, and this sheet is calculated automatically by the system. There will always be a detailed budget table per participant and then consolidated budget table per participant following, meaning that if you have 5 participants, for example, you will have 5 detailed budget tables followed by 5 consolidated tables per participant. And sheet 5, as I mentioned before, is a consolidated table per project, and this sheet needs to be assembled manually by the coordinator and must match the financial data entered either manually or automatically throughout the whole application. Next slide, please. I will go more into the details of the different cost categories in the detailed budget table that needs to be submitted per each beneficiary. So this budget table is presented per participant, per work package, and per cost category. And you need to keep in mind that the total project costs, meaning the personnel costs, the subcontracting, the purchase costs, and other cost categories and indirect costs need to be in balance with the project income, which includes the EU contribution, revenues and contributions by third parties, or your own resources. I will explain a little bit now what can be included in each of the cost categories or how the costs are calculated. Next slide, please. So we'll start with personnel costs. Personnel costs can fall under any of the following 4 categories that I will present to you a little bit in detail. The first subcategory are costs for employees. These are eligible as personnel costs if they fulfill certain general eligibility conditions and are related to personnel working for the beneficiary under an employment contract. And this employee is assigned directly to the action. How these personnel costs for employees are calculated is that you will have to take the daily rate for this person and multiply by the number of day equivalents that are worked on the action as per timesheets that you will be keeping. What is very important here is to know that there is a horizontal ceiling of 215 days that are the number of day equivalents per year. So you cannot count more than 215 working days for a person. The second category is category A2, which is natural persons working under a direct contract other than employment contract. These persons are eligible if basically they work under similar conditions as employees of the beneficiary, meaning, for example, same office presence rules, etc. The costs related to their work on the action are not significantly different from those of personnel performing similar tasks. Their work results belong to the beneficiary, and the costs declared amount solely to remuneration and the taxation costs for the person in question. The next category of personnel costs is costs for seconded person transferred by a third party against payment. These are also eligible as personnel costs if they are assigned to the action and fulfill the general eligibility conditions. The seconded persons means basically that these persons are still employed by a third party and they are still paid by the third party, but they work for the beneficiary and are at the disposal of the beneficiary. What you need to keep in mind here is that the secondment contracts that you might have with these third parties need to follow the applicable national legislation rules. Next slide, please. The last category of personal costs refers to direct SME owners without salary. you will need to here keep in mind that these costs can only be applicable for direct owners or co-owners of the beneficiary. And these must be SME owners as per the title, working without salary. The eligible direct personal costs declared by beneficiaries that are SMEs are then based on a unit cost per day equivalent worked on the action. So this value of the work of the SME owner and natural persons not receiving a salary will then need to be determined by multiplying the applicable unit cost by the number of day equivalents worked on the action. The calculation of the unit cost is also available in Annex 2A, so you have it always at hand, and you will need to also apply a specific country-specific correction coefficient to this unit cost. Next slide, please. This is how the detailed budget table looks for the personnel costs. I highlighted here the columns or parts of the table that you absolutely need to fill in. So for categories 1 to 3 of personnel costs, you will need to select from the drop-down list staff category and then indicate a monthly rate per each person. And also the month equivalent to be worked on the project. For the SMEs owner, since this is a unit cost, you need to indicate the daily rate as per the decision or Annex 2A, as I said. And then these rates will be basically verified by us, and we will let you know in case something needs to be corrected. You will also need to fill in the last two columns that you see there, which is whether these persons are working on other work packages, and then a description of the project tasks that they are involved in, which can be copied from the narrative part B from the table that you will see on the next slide. So we can, yeah, this is just for you to know where you can copy from. We can continue to the next slide. So the next cost category is subcontracting, which basically serves to purchase goods, works, or services that are related to the implementation of specific tasks which are part of the action. Subcontractors work without the direct supervision of the beneficiary, which is, for example, different to in-house consultants. You need to keep in mind that subcontracting can only relate to a certain part of the action. And for example, project management tasks or core tasks cannot be subcontracted. Subcontracting needs to be described in Annex 1 and budgeted in Annex 2. In case of unforeseen subcontracting costs that come along, this might be also approved ex post during reporting, but in principle, it should be foreseen. There are certain other rules. There needs to be basically you need to follow a complete selection procedure in compliance with your internal procurement rules to select subcontractors and avoid any conflict of interest. In the detailed budget table, for the subcontracting, you need to indicate the name of the item, so some sort of a short name that covers a little bit the idea of this subcontract, as well as a short description of the subcontracted project activities and the foreseen costs, of course. The description can be copied also from narrative part B, which you will see in the next slide. And as I said, needs to be budgeted in Annex 2. I will also just mention quickly that subcontracting going beyond 30% of the total eligible costs must be well justified in the application. We can move on to the next slide. The next cost category are purchase costs. So purchase costs are contracts made to get services, works, and goods that do not cover the implementation of the action, but their purchase is necessary to carry out the action, which is basically the difference with subcontracting. So these can, for example, be purchase of consumables or of equipment. Purchase costs are then divided into three subcategories, which are travel costs and related subsistence allowances, equipment costs, and costs of other goods and services. Next slide, please. So I will start with travel, accommodation, and subsistence costs. So these costs can be budgeted only for personnel working on the action, and excuse me, when these costs are justified. So these are necessary under the action, and they are planned in the description of the action, supported by relevant documents, and basically the plans need to be made following the usual practice of the beneficiary. Travel costs, accommodation, and subsistence costs must be budgeted as unit costs, which means that there are prefixed amounts as per the linked commission decision. Same as the unit cost for the personal cost for SME owners, you will also find these values in Annex 2A as well. For these unit costs, so for travel costs, the calculation is made based on the distance between the departure, which usually is the place of employment, and the arrival point. So to be specific, for example, if you travel from Lisbon to Madrid, there is a flight calculator or rail calculator, depending on your travel instance, where you will put Lisbon to Madrid. You will get a distance that will then basically identify the unit cost applicable to your travel. Just keep in mind that this unit cost applies to return trip. So you do not multiply the amount that is applicable to your travel. It's already including a return trip. For accommodation, the units are counted as nights. And again, you have the values available in the commission decision or in Annex 2A. And for subsistence, we count a 24-hour period. There is basically a possibility to also meet actual costs to cover certain travel instances, because the commission decision may not cover your particular travel instance. It might be certain countries, certain means of transport, etc. But as a principle, they need to be budgeted as unit cost if covered by the commission decision. Next slide, please. So in the detailed budget table, this is how travel costs need to be entered. You will need to first choose which column applies to your situation, whether you are using actual costs or unit costs. But as I said, mostly it will be unit costs. And then regardless of whether actual costs or unit costs are applicable for your travel instance, then it is important to provide the calculation details in the description column. This means details about whether this is an international or national travel, or where is the place of departure and place of arrival, the number of days you're traveling for, the number of personnel that is traveling, which unit costs you applied, etc., so that we can verify that you've applied the correct rates. Next slide, please. Now I move on to equipment costs. So these costs are basically purchases of equipment that are used for the action and must be declared always as depreciation costs. So these should be calculated on the basis of the costs that are actually incurred, but only the portion of the cost that corresponds to the rate of actual use of this equipment for the action. As mentioned on the slide, these costs need to be recorded in the assets register, basically using the international accounting standards or the beneficiary's usual accounting practices. You can also budget costs for renting or leasing equipment. which are also eligible, but they do not, only in case they do not exceed the depreciation costs of a similar equipment and do not include any financing fees. As you can see in the print screen from the detailed budget table, there are separate lines for purchase and for rental or leasing, and you will have to provide information in all these highlighted columns. So the estimated price, the depreciation method you used, and the description again of the equipment and the need for the project. Next slide, please. There's the last category of a purchase cost is other costs. These are other goods, works, and services that must be calculated on the basis of the costs that are actually incurred. This can be, for example, catering costs, meeting room rent, and the other examples that you may see on the slide. These services or goods need to be purchased specifically for the implementation of the action. Here you need to make sure that they are listed in the correct category in the detailed budget table, and that you provide all possible details that you can in the description of the task activities column. Next slide, please. So the next cost category is financial support to third parties. As it was mentioned by Daniela, so we know that the main priority of this action is to provide direct financial support to eligible SMEs for the activities that are specified in the call. The SMEs benefiting from this financial support will need to justify all expenses by providing the consortium the supporting documents for each expense, and they will then be reimbursed up to a maximum of 2,500 euros based on proof of activities carried out. The financial support to third parties must be part of the project costs and has to be included in the corresponding cost heading. You also should keep in mind that for this call, the financial support to third parties is budgeted as actual cost, as highlighted on the print screen from the detailed budget table, and not as unit cost. So those columns would not apply to you. Also, as you may have seen, financial support to third parties is a cost reimbursed at 100%, as opposed to all the other cost categories that are reimbursed at 90% in this call. Next slide, please. The last category of costs are indirect costs. These are running or operating costs, also known as overheads. As these are not directly linked to the action implementation and are not attributed solemnly to the action, there is no need of breakdown for these costs because these are reimbursed at a flat rate of 7% of the eligible direct costs. Basically, I think this is obvious, but you need to keep in mind that they cannot be covered. Anything that is covered by indirect costs cannot be covered in any other cost category, as it is counted in the flat rate. Next slide, please. Project income. So as I said, the project costs have to be in balance with the project income. And following each detailed budget table for each participant, there is also this green table including project income. This table will cover the EU contribution and any other revenues or contributions by third parties that may be counted into project income for the project. Basically, any leftover amount that will not be covered by any of these categories will then automatically be put into the own resources of the beneficiary. Next slide, please. The payment arrangements for this grant. So I will just basically quickly introduce what would happen if your project or your proposal is selected and the grant agreement is signed. So you will normally receive then pre-financing of 70% within 30 days of entry into force of the project. The call also specifies that there will be one or more interim payments, but which will include detailed cost reporting. But the details, I mean, if we see that the pre-financing is 70%, we can understand that most likely there will be one interim payment, but this will be detailed at the grant agreement preparation stage. And then there is one final technical and financial report, which is linked to the request for the payment of the balance. Please note that all the payments are made to the coordinator. And so the coordinator must then distribute the payments received from the granting authority to the other beneficiaries without any unjustified delay. Thank you. That's all from me today.
Hello, everyone. With that, oh, please.
Very much. Thank you very much, Jana. And I think you very much provided an interesting coverage of all of the financial aspects. I'm quite sure that there will be indeed, questions or points for further reflection. Now, I let the floor to Mariana Juras, project advisor in DG Grow. Mariana, you will be giving us an overview of the Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs call, which I understand is, as I said before, sort of sister call of our bridge call. So thanks for your time. You've got roughly in between 10 and 15 minutes to give us an overview. And needless to say, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Daniele. So indeed, I want to start my brief presentation saying that this is indeed a separate call than the one you were listening today. So it has the same general objectives. It was published at the same day, but it will have different requirements. It will have different dates. So indeed, a separate procedure altogether. Also, this call has had info day already. So if you want to learn more about this call and about the program, you are free to go to the website of EISMEA of the call, where you will find the longer presentation, the recording of the info day. So more info is definitely there. Today, I will just give, as Daniela said, a brief teaser of the call and the program, so that you see if this could be very interesting for you or your partners. So the beginning of my presentation is a short introduction in the program itself. The program itself has been running for 14 years now, and the call I will talk about is linked to this Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs program. So what is the program? Next slide, please. It's a program of the European Union that helps provide aspiring European entrepreneurs with the skills necessary to start or successfully run a small business in Europe. So this is the general idea, and it works in a way that new entrepreneurs gather and exchange knowledge and business ideas with the experienced one, with whom they collaborate for a period up to 6 months abroad. So the idea is that the new entrepreneur, already established or aspiring new entrepreneur, travels abroad and exchanges with the experienced entrepreneur. And the stay is partly financed by the European Commission. Next slide, please. Who can participate? Next. So new and host entrepreneurs from the 27 EU member states and other participating countries can participate. Next. It's important to say there is no age limit for the participation of either new or host entrepreneurs. So we are called Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs, but in fact, there is no age limit. So who are the new entrepreneurs? And like I said, they are either already established or would-be entrepreneurs who have a specific already established business plan, detailed business plan. And the criteria to be a new entrepreneur is that you have cumulatively less than 3 years of experience in running a business. So of course, so you can be already established, but up to 3 years of experience. We have no limits in relation to the sector. So these new entrepreneurs can be from any, and hosts can be from any sector. And the hosts, unlike the new entrepreneurs, of course, they have to have some experience. They have to be successful, experienced entrepreneurs, owners, managers, with at least 3 years of experience. So of course, this is the cutoff 3 years. Only if you are more than 3 years in experience, you can become a host. So they can be also, as like I said, owners or directly involved in management board. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits? Why do we have this program? The idea is that this program is a win-win for both new and host entrepreneurs. What do the new entrepreneurs get? They get obviously the training, on-the-job training. They develop their skills. They get some knowledge, some networking, and they gain experience in managing a small business. On the other hand, hosts get what they need the most. They get some fresh ideas, fresh energy into their company. They learn about the foreign market because the new entrepreneurs come from abroad, and also get some potential for networking. So it's a win-win for both parties. And now, how does it work in practice? Next slide, please. So in our program, we have so-called intermediary organizations, IOs. These are the local contact points that we recruit via the calls. Currently, we have 165 IOs, local contact points, in 35 countries. So the IOs promote the program, recruit and match entrepreneurs, pay EU contribution to the new entrepreneurs, and they support entrepreneurs during the exchange. In the program, we also work with support office. It's a our contractor who helps the new entrepreneurs, the host entrepreneurs, the intermediary organizations with the day-to-day management of the program, the help desk, they promote the program on the European level, etc. So this is also one entity that helps with the program. So yes, how does it work in practice? The entrepreneurs have to apply in our via our IT tool, as we call it, the application tool and the program tool on the internet, where the new entrepreneurs have to apply with their motivation, CV, as well as business plan. While host entrepreneurs, of course, don't need a business plan, we have to check on the other, in other ways that they have a successful company, but they only have to do a motivation and CV. The local contact points, the IOs help with the application, they check the eligibility, and after the entrepreneurs have been approved in the system, there starts the matching process, which they can do either themselves or automatically, or we propose the matches based on their keywords they put in the system. Once the match is agreed on, we agree on the activities they will do in the exchange, what they will do, what will be the benefits for a new entrepreneur, what will be the benefits for hosts, and then we sign the contract, and a new entrepreneur receives the training before going abroad. After all that is prepared and ready, the new entrepreneur is traveling abroad and they are doing the exchange with the host entrepreneur in their company, and the local contact points of the host can help, if necessary, the new entrepreneur with the stay abroad if they have any issues or concerns, etc. After the exchange, we ask for the feedback of the entrepreneurs. It's very important for future development of the program, and we pay the final payment to the new entrepreneur. Next slide, please. So this is the table where we show the monthly allowances per the country of destination. So it depends where the new entrepreneur is traveling, and then this is the monthly lump sum they receive. Next slide, please. What are the key achievements? This year we have celebrated 11,000 business exchanges created. So we are now already 14 years working in this program, and we have achieved many business exchanges, which in turn addressed the youth unemployment. They delivered education, entrepreneurial education. We offered practical support to the SMEs. By using this international element, we strengthened the single market connections, create new businesses, help create new businesses, help create resilient companies, and we contribute to green and digital transition. So these are all the achievements we had in the last 14 years. Next slide, please. Now, for you, of course, it's very important and interesting to see how the Ukraine fits in this program. We have had their participation for several years now. Currently, we have 5 active IOs in Ukraine. Since February last year, we wanted to extra help the Ukrainians, so we had more flexibility introduced in their application. So, for example, if some Ukrainian person is temporarily displaced in Poland and they want to participate in the program, we allowed that the host entrepreneur, the hosting can also be done in Poland, so it's not necessary for the new entrepreneur to travel another time abroad. With all our efforts to promote this program to Ukraine, to help the Ukrainians, we have actually had the highest number of participation of Ukrainians in the program historically, so really it reached record levels last year. Next slide, please. As you can see on the graph, even the applications and the exchanges really increased drastically in 2022. Next slide, please. But even with this historical levels, we still wanted to help extra the Ukrainian entrepreneurs and support them via this program. So with this in mind, we have published already this call, Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs Ukraine, a specific call targeted specifically for Ukrainian new entrepreneurs. So the purpose of the call is to recruit the IOs, the intermediary organizations, the local contact points that will implement this at the local level. So they will, as I said, recruit entrepreneurs, promote the program, manage their relationships, etc. So specific for this call is that the new entrepreneurs must have a Ukrainian citizenship. So this is specifically targeted to them. And what are the objectives? So we want to really help them, the Ukrainian entrepreneurs, with on-the-job training to foster sharing experience information between Ukrainian and other European entrepreneurs. Next slide, please. We want to help them and get market access in the single market, and we want to support the networking between them and the European entrepreneurs. And of course, the ultimate goal is to facilitate the continuation of business in Ukraine and help with the reconstruction phase. Next slide, please. So this is from the call. These are the work packages for the IOs, for the local points. So like I said before, they have to manage the program, do the networking and reporting, promote the program, recruit entrepreneurs, build the relationships, and manage them. Next slide, please. These are the numbers, the important numbers of our call. We have a total budget of 3 million euros, and our overall target is to have exchanges with 430 Ukrainian new entrepreneurs. So this is the overall goal. We expect to have around 5 projects, 5 consortia, with 30 IOs in total involved in the implementation, which means that the maximum grant per consortia will be around 600,000 euros, with the target per project of having minimum 85 Ukrainian new entrepreneurs exchanged. The call requirements are detailed in the actual call, but I can tell you that the consortium should have 4 to 8 partners, minimum one partner coming from Ukraine, and the lead IO, so the one in charge of the whole, well, in the lead of the whole consortia, has to have at least 3 years of experience in the Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs program. Co-financing, we do up to 100% for the money for the new entrepreneurs and up to 90% for other budget categories. Next slide, please. So I want to stress here that one difference between this call and the call you've been hearing about today is that here, not all partners need to be experienced in this program, the Enterprise Europe Network clusters. So we allow a fresh entities to be partners in your consortia. So they are all, and there should be all entities who are public entities who are responsible and active in the fields of economic affairs, enterprise, business support, and related issues. So if you have a partner who is in this field and who can prove that they have access to the target group, so fresh entrepreneurs, Ukrainian entrepreneurs, then they can be eligible for this call to be a partner. So these are the examples here. Who are we looking at? Who we want to see in the call, applying for the call. Next slide, please. Just to let you know that we will also launch a separate procedure for the selection of a contractor that will help with the promotional campaign. So we'll have extra funds for that, an extra call procedure. And we will also develop online training modules. So this will be complementary, so the entrepreneurs can go online and be prepared for working with in the single market, to having a business working with the single market. I'll almost at the end. I'll just tell you that the submission deadline for our call, so for the Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs call, is 11th of May. So this is different from the one you were listening today. And the project will start the project is expected to start on the 1st of October and last until the 31st January 2026. Next slide, please. Like I said, next slide, more information about the program in general, Erasmus for Young Entrepreneurs, you can get on our dedicated website. While, like I said, more information on the call itself that's been published, you can go to ESMEA website and find the call itself, the recording of the info day and presentations. And I'm here as well to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
I thank you, Mariana, for being so precise with the timing. You very much stick to the 15 minutes which were given to you. And also thanks again for this review of indeed the project. I call it the sister project of the bridge call. But like you were saying very rightfully, it's a different call and with different also submission deadlines. Now, I sense to understand that there is one question, and that pertains the presentations. The presentations will be indeed shared with you on the call page on the ESMEA website. So we will be providing you with the recording of this info day, as well as the presentations that we are, of course, more than happy to post on our webpage. Meaning, though, it's a little bit of a disclaimer, but I want to make sure about this. The presentations don't engage legally. Don't engage legally the agency. What has legal value is the
call text. That is very important to remember. I don't know if there's any other questions. It means that it's rather clear, but needless to say, should you have any other points that you want to bring to our attention, please do not hesitate to send an email to the usual call functional mailbox. I will repeat it again for your reference. It's Eismea slash no, not slash, but well, how should I put it? It's Eismea SMP Cosme Enquiries at ec.europa.eu, but you find the reference of the, voila, there it is, indeed. So that's where you can send your request, bearing in mind that you need to make reference to our specific call, because this is a general functional mailbox for all single market program and Cosme inquiries. So please make sure to make reference to our specific bridge call should you need so. I think we are approaching toward the end of this info day. I would once again like to thank you for joining us today, Martin Dies from DG Grow, Jana Dobiazova from Eismea, Mariana Uras from the European Commission, who presented us with the sister call of the Bridge project. And also a big thank to our colleagues here in Eismea who helped us running the show. They're not visible, but a big thank to Maria Romani and Robin Fichera, who helped us indeed to set up the IT infrastructure. So many thanks to them as well. And that being said, I will close this info day. We very much look forward to receiving your application. And well, what can I say? Stay tuned and be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck.